So I will do a short introduction. So yeah, the next session that we will do with Hailey is about ethics. And it's, of course, a big question. It has already been touched upon a couple of times in other sessions. And it is one of the main concerns around the use of AI, especially with generative AI. So if you create content, so you touch upon a couple of things. So we found Hailey willing to talk about that. And it would be probably one of the many topics you can talk about on AI, because I think you're really all round. So as far as I know, you have like a master degree in AI at Stanford, but I think that you could have been talking about prompting, about the technology, about AI learning, but we chose this time to have you talk about uh, uh, AI and ethics. So I'm really looking forward to discussion because I think it's a big topic. Hailey, can you maybe first introduce yourself, and then I think you want to share some things with us first.
Yes, hi everyone. I'm Hailey Yoon. I'm a software developer based in Dubai. So I am a CTO in residence at Gleek. So I'm in charge of developing AI and a lot of other software development in terms of learning and development space.
Um, just give me a sec because yeah. So Hailey, can you share your screen and do your presentation for us?
I think I need to rejoin if I want to do that. Molly, anyway, you can share the screen, or should I rejoin after this?
You're muted, Molly.
There should be in the bottom a place that you can start sharing your screen. And that bottom,
Can you see my?
no.
Not yet.
Okay, very good.
Yes,
No.
it's loading. Yes, perfect.
Ah, good. Yes, so I just wanted to quickly walk you through what I want to go through during today's session. So I want to make sure that everybody here walks away with awareness and this long-term impact that what are the things that we need to look out for in the world of AI, especially if those of you who are in learning and development space and edutech space, it's very critical that you are aware of certain bias or what are the things that we need to intentionally look for uh, when integrating AI into your learning strategy. So I want to spend some time, the first 10 minutes, diving into AI in L&D and definitions of what are the important keywords and definitions of them. And next one, I want to talk about case studies. So I prepared 3 example case studies, one with ChatGPT that everybody's aware of, and one with ChatSonic, and one with Google Bard. So we're going to go through and identify bias together. And lastly, if like a Q&A session, talking about questions that you guys have. So the first thing that I want to talk about is human bias versus AI bias. So whenever there is a learning and development, we often think about what are the bias that we have. So human biases are often rooted in social, cultural, and personal perspective. So heavily depending on your background, your upbringing, your cultural background, or where you reside right now. And AI biases typically stem from the data they are trained on, the design of algorithms and objectives set by their human creators. So it's not AI itself is it biased. It's more like the human creator who trained the model with specific data set. The mistake can be amplified after AI getting involved. So that's AI bias. So both types of biases have significant implications for data privacy, fairness, and accessibility. So the first part that I want to talk about is data privacy. So data privacy in the context of AI and L&D refers to the protection of personal and sensitive information. So this can be, there's, GDPR is commonly known one. There's a legal compliances that we need to make sure in a lot of the Middle Eastern countries, the sensitive information cannot leave the country. For example, Saudi Arabia, passports, any national ID information has to reside locally. And we want to make sure this data misuse doesn't happen. So that's one area that we need to focus on. And the next one is fairness. So fairness in AI and L&D refers to impartial and equitable treatment of all learners by AI systems. So there are 4 areas that we need to intentionally think about. So bias prevention, equal opportunities, ethical responsibility, and long-term impact. So we want to make sure this AI is fair in terms of availabilities and also analysis of the information when using AI.
Can I ask a question on that, Hailey?
Yes, of course.
That is not only depending, of course, on AI. It's equal opportunities and things like that. Well, the world is not completely fair, and things are not distributed even. So it's great that you want to do that. That you want to take that into account in AI. But is there something that AI can actually do to sort of bridge those gaps that we have and be more, that it becomes more equal? So not only guarding that it's equal, but making sort of an active role. Can we do something with AI there? Do you understand my question?
I think I kind of get it. So AI could improve. So AI could actually improve fairness because AI doesn't get emotional. Because sometimes when human is making a decision or a human needs to make assessment on somebody's performance, often that your personal interaction with the other individual can create something that's more in favor or less in favor. So I think AI could definitely help in that area. Did I answer your question?
Yes, yeah, indeed, sort of. Yeah, but I'm also thinking that I assume because AI will make a lot of knowledge available. So probably somebody who is better educated already has a lot of knowledge will have less advantage of AI, and someone with less education can benefit more from AI because now that knowledge is suddenly also available. So I was thinking also along those lines that it can actually equalize things and help people educate themselves or get access to knowledge.
Absolutely. I think in that context, I think it's more about so people who already have knowledge, background and knowledge, it'll be more of validation because you always want to double check if what you're thinking and what you believe in is correct, or the fact you want to fact check the information. And if the person does not have previous knowledge in it, it'll be definitely very helpful to get more information using AI.
Correct. Okay. Thank you.
And the last part, not last, is accessibility. So accessibility is in this learning and development context, we are referring to usability for all learners, including those with disabilities or learning differences. So we want to make sure that we do inclusive learning, legal and ethical obligations are met, diverse learning needs, and technology as an enabler. So we don't want this technology to become a barrier for those, for certain learners. So I prepared 3 case studies. So I would actually love to see on chat that if any of you guys use AI tools on your daily operations and what are the tools that you prefer. I personally use ChatGPT a lot, and I started using Chessonic also because Chessonic gives a lot of good resource references. And when I was using this, I started to notice some inaccurate information or something that is biased, and I want to walk you through those examples today. So we talked about three different areas. So the first part that we talked about fairness, and then bias, then last accessibility. So I prepared one example each. So the first one will be done with ChatGPT, so assessing fairness. So I asked ChatGPT a question. So the question was, do you alter your leadership training recommendations based on the age or years of experience of the manager? And could you give me an example of how recommendations differ for a younger manager versus a more seasoned one? And here, ChatGPT gave me 6 key recommendations for 6 for young managers and 6 for more senior managers. And the young managers, it recommended fundamentals of leadership, mentoring and coaching, adapting to corporate culture, technology and innovation, communication skills, and emotional intelligence and self-awareness. So one thing that I noticed right away is that here, young managers, so here there is like a little bit of bias in assessing the fairness that younger managers need more emotional intelligence, because it's not necessarily person's years of experience that you develop emotional intelligence. So that's one thing that came to my mind right away. And the second part is for more senior managers, it recommended advanced leadership concepts, mentoring others, navigating organizational change, updating skills, executive presence and influence, and succession planning. And here, one thing that I found very interesting is missing technology and innovation, because a lot of senior managers or senior roles of the company are often innovators, creators, and they're being more senior or more seasoned managers doesn't necessarily mean you're not tech savvy. Yet this information did not include any of the technology part, so I found that very interesting. Lastly, combining all of this,
Can I ask
it
something?
yes.
So the fact that it makes a distinction, that is not the case. It's more the assumptions that it has connected to the different roles that sort of bother you. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
So I have found it very interesting how ChatGPT has this set of recommendations that's tailored for younger managers and seasoned managers, and I do see majority of them being helpful, and I can see that it's good intention, and they ChatGPT tried its best to build the training that's best for them, but. One thing that I would do differently as a human is I think I would give everybody, no matter which level, all managers, technology and innovations and mentoring and coaching options instead of mentoring others and coaching missing from seasoned managers. Sorry, not missing. Younger managers, because younger managers could also mentor the younger, like junior developers or more junior analysts in the company. And now the next part is testing for bias. The question that I asked was, for a leadership workshop, would you recommend different skill development areas for male and female managers? If yes, what are these areas? So this is answer generated by Google Bard, and I know this is a sensitive sensitive issue, gender bias, and something that I found interesting is I actually asked these questions to all ChatGPT, ChatSonic, and Google Bard, and the only AI that I found that gave two different responses. Sorry, two different responses, for one for male and one for female, was Google Bard, and that's why I selected this example. So here it actually begins very nicely. While many leadership skills are universal and applicable to both male and female managers, there are also some specific areas of skill development that may be more relevant. And it Bard list, for male managers, they might benefit more from emotional intelligence and self-awareness, empathy and active listening, communication style adaptability, collaborative leadership and consensus building, coaching and mentoring. So these are listed for male managers. Interestingly, female managers, it listed assertiveness and self-advocacy, networking building alliances, sponsorship, mentorship, visibility, self promotion, work life balance, and resilience. So I found this very interesting that male managers, the Google Bard is suggesting male managers to work on more soft skill side. You need to be empathetic, you need to collaborate, you need to communicate well, while female managers need to step up your game. You need to be more assertive. You need to demonstrate more leadership, and also work-life balance and resilience. So I thought this was extremely interesting. I would love to hear your thoughts here, Casper.
Yeah, so indeed, so the questions comes to mind, and I also see some remarks in the chat around that. So one of the suggestions in the chat is, to prevent this from happening, you should have like gender neutral content uploaded in your AI to prevent this from happening. But then the question, is that the case? Because you indicated that the three tools gave you three different answers, and probably all three of them are trained on generic web content. So is it the content that makes it biased, in this case for gender, or is it also the AI that is maybe biased, maybe it's programmed wrong or learning wrong? I don't know. So do we know that?
I think it's a little bit of both, because the data it trained on is made by humans. So I think that's uh, one cause, one factor that's causing this. And I think I see it in the comment asking, is the issue with the AI having bias or the prompt suggesting? And I definitely think it's prompt engineering too. So when we, as a user, using AI for different learning development context, maybe we could do more prompt engineering that produce least no bias, or at least mitigate the bias, so that when we are developing some training modules or company milestones or company learning milestones, we can be less biased. So.
Because it touches on a topic that we discussed yesterday briefly, and that is that all these tools get their information from generic sources, but those sources are biased by definition, because the access to internet was earlier in the West. So a relatively larger part of the internet content is created by people from the West, Europe and the United States, and maybe even I don't know. Even there's a difference in that maybe white male have more impact or more input there, and other countries who got access later probably have less content there. So it's just also a way, and it's also a number game in fact. So that is a really strange phenomenon, is it?
And one of the reasons that I am showing different AI tools is so that you get a little bit of idea of how each AI behaves, because they are trained on slightly different models, and so when you ask very general questions, it doesn't show that much. But when you start asking more deeper questions, or deeper more about philosophy, or are like more sensitive areas, that's when you will see the differences of each AI. So I highly encourage everybody here to test run it yourself It's very interesting. The last case studies that I have is evaluating accessibility. So how would you adapt your training module recommendations for a manager with a physical disability? And can you give a specific example? So this is an example that I got from Chesonic. And here, I don't have it included in the screenshot, but one thing that I really like about Chesonic is it actually gives you a source where exactly they got the information from. So here, when you see the number 2, that actually goes into that specific source. So this is not AI just coming up on its, I will say, it's actually more evidence-based result.
But
So
doesn't
here,
that get more like a search engine instead of AI? Because it doesn't give you an answer, it gives you a quote.
it's paraphrased, but it's showing where exactly they got this evidence from. So like, how did they come to this conclusion? So
Correct.
I would say if anybody ever needs some more fact check and you want to see why that AI is responding that way, Chesonic might be your best tool. And here it talks about how a manager with physical disability, it's crucial to provide appropriate accommodation and support. And for example, if there is a manager with low vision, the training materials can be made accessible by using large print text or audio tape recordings. And additionally, providing equipment with large monitors and can enhance their ability to perform tasks more effectively. And it's also important to communicate effectively with individuals who are blind and ask for permission before interacting with their uh, guide dog, or overall by customizing accommodations based on the specific needs of the manager with a physical disability. So here, something that uh, I thought about is uh, learning and development. We often forget that there are larger audience than uh, there is a very large group of people with different needs. So in this particular example, we're talking about physical disability, but it could be neurological disorder or different types of needs. And I think it's very important that that you, when you select a learning tool for the company learning and development uh, strategy, that you give that options for everybody. So everybody has access to learning materials, learning tools, and they can actually participate in learning.
Can I ask a question on that? Because that sort of opens up a really interesting discussion. Because on one hand, you want the content to be not biased and fair. On the other hand, you want it to be as specific as possible, tailored for someone's needs. But with that, you open up a sort of a risk that you enter into bias, because the moment that you make it specific, you have probably some assumptions on how to do that. So isn't that sort of a contradiction?
I, I see your point. It is a little tricky because we want to be not biased and be very inclusive at the same time.
Correct. Isn't
But I
that?
think
Yeah,
I
I'm
think
always, maybe you have to choose one over the other.
I think being inclusive will hopefully also get rid of the bias because it'll cover more variety of variety of spectrum that you can offer for learning and development. And I think it's very interesting how we as a human use the tool when developing learning strategies for company or your team members or for yourself for career navigation. The whole reason that I wanted to bring this awareness to everybody is so that now when you interact with AI, you know what are the things, or what are the things that might be wrong or might be misleading, and now you will intentionally filter the information that you receive from AI.
Correct. Yeah. So, and if you look at, oh, sorry, go ahead with your closing thoughts because it was probably too soon.
So closing thought. So we explored practical aspects of AI tools, emphasizing the need for unbiased, inclusive technology, concluded with a reminder of the importance of ethical considerations in AI-driven learning. Most importantly, being informed and aware of these issues is the first step. And now we know that, now we know what to watch out for in the future.
Do you also have specific recommendations? So, for example, I thought I've heard in your story that ChatSonic might be a bit less biased than the other two. Like, is that a better tool, or are there? It's also about the prompting, of course. So, do you have certain advice on what we should do and what we shouldn't do?
So for me personally, when I do learning and development strategies, when I'm doing more of a research side, I always go for ChatSonic because I can trace back to the source and then decide if I want to include it or not. But more casual or like friend like bouncing off ideas, I go for ChatGPT. But ChatGPT, I do very I intentionally make sure the data prompting is not I always include the command to say highlighting that do not do this or do not do that so that I don't get certain bias. So for example, uh, for I would say for Asian students, this please use same standard as Western universities, or
Okay,
like I intentionally add one more sentence so that the bias is not there.
Okay, it's interesting because that's not different. How if I have a question, so probably for with one question I would go to one person, and with another question I prefer to go to another person. So you just do sort of the same with your AI tools. You have a specific tool for each kind of question. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, I think we have a few more minutes for questions. So, Molly, have you been monitoring the chat and look
Yeah,
at the topic there?
yeah, we do have a few questions here. One question from Christina: if we are coming up with organization-specific AIs, might we be able to control these types of biases, or will the biases be hidden and the organization existing content be amplified?
Yes. So a lot of organizations have their own closed AI, which ensures the privacy and just in case confidentiality, so that your information or possibly biased information does not leave your organization, and you can mitigate within your system. So yeah.
Okay.
Something that we do is we have mentor GPT. So this is the I'm sure everybody here is familiar with this new GPT model training that you can build your own GPT now, and it's something that you should definitely try. So you can do it with OpenAI, or there are a lot of other tools on open source on GitHub. I do prefer OpenAI. Sorry, any open source information so that I get variety of data sets, and that's not just our organizations for comparison wise. But I do see why some organizations prefer to stay private, uh, especially when the data is sensitive. So a lot of like law firms, consulting firms do prefer the closed AI.
And
Okay.
that means that you run an AI engine on your own server, so the data doesn't leave your own, doesn't go beyond your firewall. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
So it stays within your intranet.
Nice. And then another question, I guess this one goes back to like we talked about it a bit. Like you mentioned that the prompts, someone asked, is the issue with the AI having bias, or with the prompts suggesting distinctions between young, older, and male, female? Yeah, I guess maybe if you can unpack that, because there were still a few questions about it. So maybe just to discuss a bit more on how you can kind of engineer the prompt to make sure that it's not gender or age bias.
Yes. So I think it's as simple as you add one more sentence saying whatever that you're worried about, include it there. That's what I normally do, and it's been working very well for me. So if I'm worried about ageism, I would say do not design or do not write the content that violates or suggests something based on their age. Or you can also more like positive side, like please emphasize more on people's experiences or qualifications than their age or their gender. So that's one thing that you could write. And so normally whatever that worries me, I tell the AI not to do that.
So you have to add that context. So by the way, that question opens up indeed another question, because if you are talking about organization-specific content, so you can control what kind of information you feed it, there might be hidden bias there as well. Would it be possible to sort of clean that up using AI? So get the bias out of your content and get like unbiased content using an AI engine, because it's really good at rewriting content. Could you do that?
So I actually I actually tested this myself. So anybody can go to OpenAI and actually try this. So ask a lot of sensitive questions and then ask them, tell me 3 bias from your answer. And a lot of times what happens is it with ChatGPT or any AI tools will tell you, oh, there is no bias. And I am, and sometimes they also state I am an AI and I'm not responsible for this. So it's very interesting that how AI reacts to bias. And we need to understand, going back to our first point, human bias versus AI bias. AI bias is bias of human that's amplified. So we need to keep in mind that we as a human creator need to be more mindful when we're creating tools like this.
But isn't it also true that all of us are always biased because you have a certain background culturally, your education, your upbringing, your experiences, that makes you by definition biased? So I think what I learned is the only thing that you can do is be aware of that and make sure that you handle that in a proper way. So isn't that sort of the same with like content or biased answers from AI? It will be there, and you just have to deal with it in a proper way.
That's how I feel about it. I personally, this is my personal opinion. I do think it's impossible to have a perfect AI with zero bias. I think because it's a human creation, there always will be little bit of bias based on who created and what model they used. However, I think it can be mitigated, and it's important that we know it's there so that we can be conscious about it.
Correct.
And yes, I just read Andrea's comment. Probably needs to be more education around bias in general. Yes. So right now, one thing that I want to highlight to educators who's attending this workshop today is be aware and be mindful of this when in a teaching I would say teaching context. So because future generation, so the younger generation, a lot of them are growing up with AI tools. They often don't filter their information, because I'm the generation that grew up without AI, and now I'm exposed to AI. I know I have my previous knowledge to compare to, and I can do more intensive analysis. But younger generation only has this AI knowledge side, and it gets a little bit more complicated when they're trying to determine if if the information is valid or not. So something that we should be mindful of.
But it's interesting because it's also, if you look at what is out there content-wise, so you have AI that gives you answers, but also a lot of people will look at social media for answers. And if there's any much biased information around, it will be there. So, and we don't regulate that. So the question is, are we measuring with two standards there?
Sorry?
Are we
I didn't
measuring with two different standards? So because we don't do anything on all the rubbish that's out there on social media, and we sort of scrutinize what's happening with AI.
it's an interesting topic for sure. It's Robert said this is a dangerous question to ask, but have you played with bias based on ethnicity? As a person of color, I am curious what the results might be. I actually haven't tested on ethnicity yet, but I did test around student context, like in terms of like the regional biases, like analysis of students in Asia versus Europe versus US, and how sometimes it's more harsh, the standard is more harsh on Asian students. So that's one thing that I noticed, but not particularly, but something I think I'm gonna try after this workshop.
There's also another direction of ethics that Chris is asking about. We spoke about it yesterday. So now we have more and more tools where you can upload specific information, but also some of those tools actively scrape information from your company. And that can be either from emails, it can be from Slack or Teams conversations, things like that. So that opens up a whole different question. So what is mine and what is for my organization, and what kind of access do people have? Do you have any thoughts on that? We sort of parked that question for this session because it's an interesting discussion, but it's a bit of different angle of ethics.
It's one thing that I've been for personally, what I've been trying to do is Google Bard started having a lot more comprehensive AI based on different documents, like everything combined. It could be Google Document, it could be Google Calendar, and then it's combining a lot of different things and giving you access to it. Here, the problem is going back to also going back to human error. So if somebody documents something that's wrong or misleading, this amplifies very fast. So let's say someone made a mistake of writing down meeting notes saying, oh, we agreed to meet next Wednesday, and it turned out it wasn't. Then it's just amplified. Anybody from the organization asking the question, it's tracing, the AI is tracing back to this particular source, which is wrong, and it could be amplified. So we need to, so I would say when you're training your own AI model for your organization, be aware that there is a room for human error.
Okay. But it's also, if I, in an email, probably write an opinion, so it's not a fact. And maybe I state an opinion that's just in an email to you, it's just for you and me and not for other people to see. So how do you regard that?
So that's, this privacy becomes very interesting. So depending on where, which country you're in and which state you're in, usually email is not, so your one-on-one conversation with your colleague shouldn't be part of the public, shouldn't be exposed to public. And I'm a strong believer that this privacy should be protected. However, this might not always be the case based on which company and which policy your organization has. Because if there's a contract that all of these information is considered company asset, then it will be part of it can be part of the training AI model. So something that you should be. But I believe EU specifically, it is illegal to include that information, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, it depends. It depends on how you read the law. We have the GDPR law in Europe, but it's not that clear on these kind of topics because it's more focused on information that I can lead back to you than it is about if you have an opinion, if that opinion can be shared. So yeah, but probably if I say that Hailey said this, then probably yes. But you put it a bit more. So yeah, so it's a bit of a question mark there, but it's an interesting one. Okay. Any other questions to wrap up with from your side, Molly, or did we sort of cover most of them?
I think we covered most of the questions. Yeah.
Okay. So well, I think then that's then we that's it for this session. So Hailey, thank you very much. Really great having you on. And well, I know we will meet in Dubai in a few weeks' time. I'm looking forward to that. So and I'm really happy that you were willing to come on our event and share your knowledge and insights.
Thank you for having me today, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Hailey.
Okay, goodbye. See you soon.